seems as though we've really just blurred that line in COVID with the objective and that whole subjective or in science yet to be determined. And we've altered everyone's lives because of it. And that's not to say that it's not a pandemic and that it's not a virus that is particularly lethal to certain groups of people. But it seems like a lot right now, especially in big tech, asking the why we've done what we've done and if this is the correct course forward is really scary, and a lot of people are afraid to speak out. This is something you and I haven't had a chance to talk about because I haven't spoken in a while. The world has changed dramatically. Has it changed your view of where the world is going fundamentally than when we last spoke maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago?
Well, I have been shocked to see how fragile our civil liberties have turned out to be across the West. I mean, China put the first lockdowns into place. Yeah. And we mimicked the actions of a totalitarian state instantly. Now, we didn't know what to do exactly in some sense, so it's a complicated problem. We didn't know the magnitude of the problem, and it's hard to criticize people in some sense for jumping to conclusions prematurely.
Right.
But it's a long while later, and the danger of using danger as an excuse for social control is making itself more and more manifest.
Yeah.
So I've been very, very sick through most of this, so I haven't had a chance to think it through as much as I might have wanted to, and I've been criticized for that too, for not adding my voice to the general clamor. I mean, I spoke again with, the leader of a new political party in Canada, Maxime Bernier, after I spoke with John Anderson about the COVID issue. My sense is that with the proper policy move, essentially, I think, is something like, we've got the vaccines. We think they're useful. You can get one whenever you want, now. And lots of people have got them. So January 15th, everything's open. And if you're not vaccinated and you have your reasons for that, then we'll still do what we can to make sure the systems are in place to take care of you if you get sick, but it's time to get back to normal. And I think an approach like that would actually convince a lot more people to get vaccinated, because when you push and you push and you force and you mandate, then all you do is radically increase the skepticism of those who are skeptical of pushing and forcing and shoving and mandating.
Right.
And I just see that, I see all of that mandate, all of that force as a admission of the failure of policy. Yeah. Like, you didn't convince as many people as you think you should have that the vaccine was a good idea. Well, whose fault is that? Well, it's the anti-vaxxers, those sons of bitches. It's no. You didn't formulate your argument properly. You didn't formulate your argument carefully. It's not so clear that all those idiots, it's their problem and they're just stupid and malevolent compared to you. It's a policy failure, and you don't admit that. You won't admit that. And so now you think you're justified in the use of force. And you're justifying that because, you're doing the right thing. It's like, are you doing the right thing exactly?
I remember when the vaccine first came out, it was unanimous, right? The insult du jour was, you dumb anti-vaxxers. Okay, Republicans will kill off their own base. Problem solved, right? Darwin Awards. I thought, great. If you believe that, then let them win it. And then it became, this is a pandemic of the unvaccinated. You said you didn't care. Let them kill themselves off. That is proof positive that the argument they presented was that someone not being vaccinated didn't affect them. And I don't even want to get into the whole anyway, people know where I line up on that. But I will say this.
Well, you see very weird things happening in Australia right now. And so, for example, and I hope I've got this right, but the police there are using an app that works on your cell phone, which so conveniently happens to know where you are, which perhaps turns out to not be such a good thing. And maybe you have to send the police a photograph of yourself with something in the background that proves you are, in fact, right there. It's like, okay, are you so sure that app isn't more dangerous than the virus?
Right.
Because it's not obvious. Like you look at an app, you look at this technology. This technology is stunningly, overwhelmingly, cataclysmically powerful.
Right.
And you think, well, it's just an app. It's like, yeah, and Tinder was just a dating app too. But it completely transformed the psychological dynamics of human sexual interactions. Right. Now, whether that's how permanent that is a whole different question. But we're faced with these radical technologies every day, and we don't even notice how revolutionary they are. Like this app, this is quite something that you have to that the technology is already there to establish a system that makes it the case that you have to take a photograph of yourself and send it to the police so they know where you are so that you can go and do your business. Are you sure that's not more dangerous than the virus?
Yeah. And
because it isn't obvious to me.
No, it's not obvious, and I would take that one step back, because I was accused of being a conspiracy theorist when I said red light cameras are unconstitutional. Same exact argument. Going, well, because a red light camera it's not a human being. It doesn't present context. These things can be faulty, and you don't have the right to monitor me at any point at any intersection. So I think
worse than that, are you so sure that establishing the precedent that enables a machine to find someone and elicit the force of the state is a good precedent?
Right.
Because remember, these things are getting twice as smart every year or so. It's like, where exactly do we want them to go?
Well, if nature's kind, that Australian app technology will be relegated to yet another pile of a mechanism for dick pics. That would be
we'll see.
Our greatest hope.
We'll see, won't we?
It's terrifying to think of. And I would say this, what scared me most is not just policy. Not that I've always believed that civil rights, certainly the government would see them as brittle. What struck me the most, and then we'll go to Mug Club only a little bit here because we've been going long on YouTube, and I want to show a clip of you sort of talking about authoritarian regimes and their relation with infectious diseases, which may be a little difficult on YouTube. We never know what they'll think about that. But I will say this: what's scared me the most, and as someone who's far more thoughtful than myself, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What scared me more is not what the government would do. I never realized how willing half of the country, half of the world, and now even more, but my fellow countrymen are willing to rat me out, even knowing that it could come with dire, violent consequences. We're going, I want to flag this person. Look, this person's breaking the rule. This person can't be allowed to go in public. This person doesn't have a passport, and revel in it.
Yeah, well, you also want to ask yourself, are you so sure you want to set up policy that rewards that kind of behavior?
Right.
Because you think, well, it's for a good reason. It's like, yeah, well, you train, people do what they practice, and they practice what you incentivize. You sure you want to incentivize that? And so, we have these liberties in some sense to distribute decision-making power so that cataclysmic errors aren't made in the name of doing the best thing.
Right.
And so,
but did you?
So I think the vaccines are there. I'm vaccinated for what it's worth, and I'm not stating that as some badge of moral superiority, but I'm still. It seems to me that the right policy move is, here's the vaccines, they're available, we're opening up, take your chances, and away we go.
Yeah.
And let's get back to our free life.
Now, the problem is, what's scary is the fact that you just said something entirely reasonable. And I go, yeah, that sounds, and I don't even necessarily know that I agree. I think that I would take it more extreme, being the right-wing extremist. I would say they had no authority to do any of this in the first place and take it a step further. But the point is, either one of our views could result in this being removed because the policies, and this goes to the First Amendment, right? It doesn't just involve the government now. Now you have people who meet with the federal government, who meet with international governing bodies. It's not a conspiracy to say Mark Zuckerberg, Susan Wojcicki, Jack Dorsey, that these people are in a meeting, a closed room meeting, and come out with agreed upon terms of what you're allowed to say. Look behind us. There's the Orwellian doublethink. And I will say that has accelerated exponentially since the last time we've spoken. And it is scary. That's what scares me, not a new disease or even the next pandemic. What scares me more is my fellow countrymen.
Well, the next pandemic worries me too, because we've established a precedent, which is,
that's true.
If the health risk is severe enough, then your civil liberties are optional. Okay, so, well, exactly how severe? Exactly. And then I think about other freedoms that we have, like the freedom to drive. That's actually pretty dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's not that good for the planet. And so just what makes you think that you should be doing that? Exactly. Like the safety issue, the impact issue. It's very disturbing to me to see those issues being hijacked for what are essentially political purposes.
Yeah.
And it's worrisome.
Remember that shocking moment when you first get behind the wheel of the car by yourself when you're 16 or 17 and you're, what? 2 tons of steel glass and gasoline and I can point it anywhere?
No kidding.
It's
no kidding. There's nothing that embodies individual freedom more than 550 horsepower internal combustion engine sports car in the hands of a young man.
Well, now you're just showing
think,
off.
Yeah.
I had the old Ford Windstar.
It's bloody amazing that was ever allowed.
I know it is absolutely insane. And you know what? The same thing can be said for the first time I ever shot a gun when I moved to the United States. I said, oh, this is the finality. This isn't a film. And that's why I've always encouraged people to take proper shooting lessons and just go understand what it is, to respect the power of anything mechanical, whether it be an automobile or be a gun. And with our kids too, I will have my kids shooting